Keir Starmer's first 100 days as Prime Minister have been defined by political turmoil, controversy, and a rapid decline in public confidence. What began as a promising new chapter for Labour after 14 years of Conservative rule has turned into a period of scandal, policy missteps, and internal strife, leaving many to wonder if Starmer's leadership can withstand the storm. Amid plummeting approval ratings, growing disillusionment, and high-profile resignations, some within Labour are calling for Starmer to step aside, with Deputy Prime Minister Rayner seen by some as a more suitable leader to navigate the party through its current crisis. One of the sharpest critiques of Starmer's premiership came from Claire Muldoon on GB News, who branded his first 100 days an utter omnishambles. Muldoon went further, suggesting that Starmer should hand over the reins to Rayner, whose leadership might offer a stronger hand to steady the ship. Her scathing remarks echo a broader sentiment of dissatisfaction among the public. Recent polling shows that 63% of Britons now feel buyer's remorse over electing Labour, just 3 months after the party's victory in July. Public frustration with Labour has grown significantly in recent weeks, and much of that discontent can be traced back to several controversial decisions made by Starmer's government. One of the most widely criticised moves has been the handover of the Chagos Islands, a decision that many see as a strategic blunder, damaging Britain's geopolitical standing. The move was perceived as a capitulation and has raised questions about Labour's foreign policy direction. Adding to the government's woes is the deeply unpopular decision to cut the winter fuel allowance for pensioners, which has sparked outrage among elderly voters, many of whom feel abandoned by a government they had hoped would protect their interests during a period of economic uncertainty. Compounding these issues is the resignation of Sue Gray, who had been serving as Starmer's Chief of Staff. Gray's departure, reportedly due to internal conflicts and dissatisfaction with her management role, sent shockwaves through Labour's leadership team. Gray was supposed to bring experience and stability to the Prime Minister's office, but her exit after just 3 months only highlights the dysfunction within Starmer's administration. Her resignation, combined with the ongoing scandal surrounding political donations to Labour, has further eroded public trust in Starmer's ability to manage his government effectively. In an interview marking his first 100 days, Starmer admitted that his time as Prime Minister had been filled with choppy moments. He acknowledged that leading the country had proven much tougher than anything I've done before, referencing the scandal surrounding political donations and the staffing turmoil as major challenges. His frank admission of the difficulties he has faced might have been intended to manage public expectations, but it has done little to alleviate concerns about the direction of his leadership. Critics argue that Starmer's frequent references to the mess left by the Conservative government are beginning to ring hollow, especially as his administration appears increasingly incapable of getting its own house in order. Starmer has made several attempts to focus on what he sees as his government's achievements. He has pointed to the settlement of public sector pay disputes and the passage of the Employment Rights Bill, which he describes as the biggest shake-up of workers' rights in a generation. The bill, which aims to ban exploitative zero-hours contracts and improve sick pay provisions, should have been a major win for Labour. However, the ongoing scandals and unpopular decisions, like the cuts to winter fuel payments, have overshadowed these policy victories. Voters seem far more focused on the government's missteps than on its accomplishments, leaving Starmer's claims of progress struggling to gain traction. Adding to Starmer's challenges is the upcoming budget, which has been the subject of intense speculation. Rumours of potential tax hikes and spending cuts have sparked fear among voters, with many accusing Labour of risking economic instability at a time when the country needs careful management. Critics from both within the Labour Party and the opposition have expressed concern that the government's fiscal policies could further erode public trust. The anxiety surrounding the budget has deepened doubts about whether Starmer's government is capable of steering the economy in the right direction, further shaking public confidence in his leadership. As Starmer grapples with these challenges, some are openly calling for a leadership change. Rayner, who has remained largely untouched by the scandals engulfing the Labour government, is increasingly seen as a viable alternative to Starmer. Her more direct and relatable style, along with her strong connection to Labour's working-class base, makes her a potentially appealing candidate to lead the party out of its current mess. Rayner has stayed in the background during much of the chaos, but her popularity remains strong, and there is a growing belief within Labour that she could provide the reset that the party desperately needs. At the same time, calls for Starmer to call an early general election are growing louder. Lord Moylan, a Conservative peer, took to GB News to deliver a brutal assessment of Starmer's first 100 days, labelling it a complete disaster and claiming that Labour had managed to reach the same level of public contempt in just 3 months that it took the Conservatives 14 years to accumulate. Moylan's remarks reflect a broader frustration among voters, many of whom feel that Labour has failed to deliver on its promises and has allowed the country to drift further into uncertainty. His demand for an early election highlights the growing sense that Starmer's leadership is at risk of collapsing under the weight of its own failures. Comparisons between Starmer's premiership and that of Tony Blair's early days as Prime Minister have been drawn frequently in the media. While Blair also faced significant challenges in his first few months, his government quickly regained control and went on to dominate British politics for over a decade. Starmer, by contrast, is struggling to overcome the perception that his administration is already unravelling. The resignation of Sue Gray has been a particularly damaging blow, symbolising the dysfunction at the heart of Starmer's leadership team. Gray, a highly respected former civil servant, was supposed to help Starmer manage the early turbulence of his administration, but her departure has only deepened the sense of chaos surrounding his government. Despite these setbacks, Starmer has continued to ask for patience from the British public. In a video message posted on social media, he emphasised that Labour had inherited a mess from the Conservatives and that fixing the country's problems would take time. He reiterated his commitment to making tough decisions that would lay the foundation for long-term change, but his appeals seem to be losing their impact. As public frustration mounts, many are questioning whether Starmer has the leadership skills to navigate the country through such a difficult period. For now, Starmer remains determined to press forward, but his leadership is on increasingly shaky ground. With calls for him to step aside growing louder and public patience wearing thin, the next few months will be crucial for both Starmer and the Labour Party. If he cannot regain control of his government and restore public trust, the push for Rayner to take over may become impossible to ignore. Rayner, with her strong working-class credentials and more pragmatic leadership style, could soon find herself in the spotlight, tasked with salvaging a Labour government that seems to be spiralling out of control. The clock is ticking for Starmer, and with each passing day, the pressure mounts. His next moves will determine not only his own political future, but also the future of the Labour Party. If he fails to turn things around, his time in power may be cut short, and Labour's hopes of a successful government could be handed over to Rayner, whether Starmer likes it or not.